I'm so pleased to have in the studio with me Richard Eskow, host. We've got a whole bio for you here. Let's see. Writer and editor, host of the Zero Hour. This is the Zero, Z-E-R-O, hour.com.
Right.
Is the website. And you can tweet Richard at RJ Eskow, E-S-K-O-W. And is that all the best?
Bernie
stuff?
2016. I worked for Bernie 2016.
And you also write for the Sanders campaign. Interesting. So, I'm curious your thoughts on how things are going with the, with our body politics, shall we say, both on the Democratic and Republican side.
Well, the two big topics. Let's start with the Democrats. I think that, first of all, already Bernie's campaign, and I'm not saying this just because I work for him, has succeeded beyond anybody's wildest expectations. And one of the things I think it succeeded in doing in the context of your question is it's exposed the fault lines within what might be called the broader Democratic base, the generational fault lines. The fact that younger people are far more left-leaning than older Democratic voters, for example. Some of the other fault lines based on policy. And also, it's kind of brought out the establishment Democrats who maybe have been in a little bit in the closet about just how establishment they are. It's forced people to kind of, not by Bernie's choosing, but just by the way the struggle's been defined.
It's the old song, which side are you on?
Which side are you on? And some people have shown their true colors in terms of that, and I think that's been very educational for folks.
Oh, okay, and on the Republican side.
And on the Republican side, look, again, fault lines have been exposed here between the establishment Republicans. And as much as I despise Trump for his nativism and his hate and all those things, he has exposed a huge rupture between the party's base and the party's establishment leaders. He's kind of the id of the Republican Party. You know, he's kind of all the repressed hatreds and fears that the Republican establishment has been playing on for so many years, now kind of erupting to the surface in the form of Donald Trump, and they're going to have to figure out how to manage that.
Thomas Frank has a new book out called Listen, Liberal!
Right.
And I did an hour-long interview with him last Friday, which is up on YouTube and, fairly easy to find. And he's been on a bunch of, in fact, last night when I got home on NPR, he was being interviewed. And so he's all over right now.
Yeah, he's doing my show this week, too.
He's doing your show. Good. The main premise of his book is, in my book, The Crash of 2016, I talk about how our economy had been stabilized by FDRism, the New Deal, Keynesian economics, and that consensus began to unravel in 1971 with the Powell memo. And I trace the modern Republican Party, essentially, the rise of power, the so-called conservative power for deregulation and whatnot, and how that has not only it did inevitably lead to the crash of 2007, but because we never solved that, there's going to be another crash this year, next year, who knows? But right. It's coming. And in fact, I would say we have been in one continuously since 2007. Mm-hmm. So what he does is he looks at the Democratic Party side of the thing, which I had not done. I didn't realize that there were smoking guns laying around, and there is one in 1972, the McGovern Commission report, in which they reinvented the Democratic Party and basically kicked labor out.
Right.
And the consequence of this has been, and intentionally embraced the, quote, professional class. The idea that, in fact, Bill Clinton in the 90s came right out and said, these blue-collar jobs that are leaving the United States, that's not a bad thing. Because, we've got this new technology, the internet, the information technology, the 21st century. We need to prepare for new jobs that require a college education, right. And it's the new high school and all that kind of thing. And basically, his premise is that the Democratic Party has become the party of the top 10%, the professional class. The Republican Party has become the party of the top 1/100th of 1%, the billionaires who fund them, and the big transnational corporations. And the bottom 90% has finally figured out that nobody's representing their interests. And this was the study that came out of Princeton, 6-8 months ago?
Right, the Gillens and Page.
Yeah, Gillens and Page. That for the bottom 90%, the probability of legislation being passed that represents their interests is equivalent statistically to white noise, whereas the top 10%, in all probability, their legislation will get passed. I'm just curious your thoughts on if you think that that's a reasonably accurate analysis, and if so, what does it mean for the future of our both political parties and our nation?
Well, I think we're seeing really disruptive times coming up. I think that, first of all, I do agree with the analysis. Secondly, I think what the Democrats are clearly trying to do in order to appeal to the 90% is to play identity politics against economic politics, to say, well, we're going to be the ones for marriage equality, although Hillary wasn't until it became inevitable around 2013, and so on. But they're going to use...
if you're black, if you're with us, if you're gay, you're with us. Just like the Republicans, if you hate gays, you're with us. If you love guns, you're with us. If you're a fundamentalist Christian, you're with us.
Right. So that's why so much Democratic Party literature these days is filled with talk of the new majority or the rising Democratic majority, meaning the ethnic shifts that are taking place around the country in terms of the rise of Latino voters, rise of black voters, and so on. But I think they're betting too much on that strategy, and I think it's going to hurt them, because I think when gay couples, married couples, can't afford to start a home, right, they're not going to be satisfied with symbolic gestures, and I think we're already seeing that. I think that strategy has a short shelf life, and the Democrats are looking at real trouble.
Well, and couldn't you argue that that these changes in both the Republican Party, which arguably during the Eisenhower administration did represent certainly the professional class. They were all Republicans back then. But, all the way down. I mean, in 56, when Eisenhower ran for re-election, it was on a platform of, we added 2 million people to the union rolls. Right. We added 1 million people to Social Security.
Exactly.
Expanded Social Security. It was almost a Bernie Sanders campaign in 56 for the Republican president.
We built the federal highways, massive infrastructure program.
All kinds of stuff. But wouldn't it be reasonable to suggest that this abandonment of the bottom 90% by both parties, or the transfer of, and your analysis is one that Thomas Frank didn't get into, and it really adds the final piece of the puzzle for me, of identity politics. Mm-hmm. This transfer of, you're not gonna have a decent life financially, right, in terms of financial security, but at least you'll know that we're on your side because we hate those gay people too, or we are those gay people too, depending on whether you're Republican or Democratic, or we love those, right, and or fill in the minority of your choice. That the phenomenon of Donald Trump in the Republican Party and Bernie Sanders in the Democratic Party, and I realize that there are many, many differences between the two of them, but both of them are speaking to the bottom 90%. Now, Trump obviously doesn't represent them. He's never had the experience of even being in the bottom 90%. He was born rich and is a billionaire. His class interests are fairly obvious, but he knows how to speak their language. Right. I mean, from his Worldwide Wrestling Federation days, his reality TV stuff. Sure.
Well, absolutely. No, I think that's right. And I think that's why you're seeing such a generational divide in the Democratic voting. I mean, Bernie has been winning in the primaries sometimes 80, 90% if you look at under 30 voters. The generational shift is enormous because they don't have that historical loyalty to the Democratic Party that predates this shift, the turn of the Democratic Party toward the top 10%, toward the professional class. So as people age out of the electorate that remember what the Democratic Party used to be and that have some historical loyalty to it, I think if the party doesn't shift, it's going to find itself sinking.
I think both parties have to reinvent themselves. Right. And I think that this election is going to force both parties to reinvent themselves. And, regardless of who the nominee is on either side, the genie's out of the bottle, or the truth has been told, whether it's Donald Trump talking about the truth of, the system is rigged, and Bernie Sanders talking about that. And now Hillary Clinton is starting to talk like that, which is great.
If you believe it, right.
Well, I actually do.
Okay.
But that's a whole nother conversation for another time. I think that she's a very smart politician, and the job of a politician isn't necessarily to lead the parade, but to notice when the parade has formed and then jump in front of it holding the flag and act like you're leading the parade.
Right. Well, okay.
And so I just, but in any case, it's, I have not given up hope. I think that there's tremendous potential for us to return to a time of concern for the bottom 90%.
Oh, I haven't given up hope. My saying is the left has already won the future primary for the Democrats. Yes. The future primary has been overwhelmingly won by the left, and that is a hopeful sign.
Yeah, I think so. And frankly, I think in the Republican Party, the era of the Koch brothers. And it's really going to be interesting to see how they use their $800 or $900 million that they intend to pour into this election. But already Donald Trump, who knows climate science. I mean, he's no idiot, right? He's a developer. I mean, they get briefed by, if they're developing waterfront property, as he has done in New York City. You get
Florida.
Right. You get briefed by the local authorities who understand this stuff. He knows, and he's on the record years ago talking about, climate change, we got to get ready, this, that, and the other thing. Now, all of a sudden, he's denying it. Why? Well, because the fossil fuel industry in the form of the Koch brothers are going to pass out $800 million to whoever's the nominee. I think that's really, really cynical. But
but he doesn't have enough money. He knows he doesn't have enough money to run in the general. He has enough money potentially to win the nomination. But when it comes time for the general election, he's going to need those guys. He's going to need those climate change deniers, those Koch brothers.
It's pretty amazing stuff. R.J. Eskow, Richard Eskow is with us right now, and you can find his radio program. This is thezerohour.com is the website. And of course, he's also working for the Bernie Sanders campaign. We have invited, by the way, people from the Hillary Clinton campaign on the program. No response yet.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.